Hey Theory students, this next set of videos is going to be all about what we call intervals. Intervals is a way to figure out the distance between two different notes. And intervals are important for what we're doing because intervals are the way that chords are built. However, it is going to take quite some time, and this is what we're going to do today if you log on, or tomorrow, and then through the weekend, and then we'll use this knowledge that we've gained to go further. So you see down here that I am going to create essentially 3 different videos for all of this stuff. The first 2 videos are going to be essential for all of you to take a look at and for all of you to practice. The advanced content for the college level stuff is going to add augmented and diminished intervals, and so that will be the 3rd video. So let's jump in and get started looking at a basic keyboard. I'm dragging over here a keyboard with all the notes labeled on them, and the way that I teach students to do these is that I teach you that D is in the doghouse. So right here we have the letter D. If you imagine these 2 black keys as being walls of a doghouse, and you can imagine a little roof over it, D is in the doghouse. So if you look at the piano, you're going to see groups of 2 and groups of 3 all the way up and down. In between every group of 2 is a D. And so right here on the keyboard, here's my group of 2, and right in between them there's a D. Now here's a group of 3. That doesn't apply yet, and then up here there's another group of 2, and then it goes 2, 3, 2, 3 all the way up and down the keyboard. So if you start there at the D, all the white keys just use the basic notes with the musical alphabet. So we have D, E, F, G, and then we start over with A, B, and C. Notice this C over here is the same C that's down here. It just repeats, and C is always right before that first wall of the doghouse. Okay? So from there, we have flats and we have sharps. A flat, if you imagine poking a tire so that it goes flat, that whole car, that tire will go lower. And so as we go lower, we go from left to right. So up here, this note is a D. The black note, lower, is a D flat. If we go up to the G note that's lower, the black, is a G flat. Okay. Also, they don't have these labeled on here, but an F flat is the next note down, which is actually an E. So if you read on the staff in F flat, you actually are going to go to the keyboard and play an E. On the other hand, to go up, we have sharps. So I imagine if you like sit on a tack or something that's sharp, it kind of pokes you, you jump up. And so if you move up on the keyboard, you go to sharp. So here is an F. The next note higher, going to the right, is an F sharp. Same way, an A, you have an A sharp, the next one above it. So the A flat goes lower and the A sharp goes higher. In the same way that F flat is E, E sharp is also F. And that applies to the gap between B and C. Notice there's not a black note here. So B sharp is actually C, and a C flat, you actually go and play a B. However, when we see them written in music, you might actually see the note that's on a C, but it has a flat next to it. If you go to a keyboard, you're actually going to be playing this note, which is C flat. All right, so if that is something that's unfamiliar to you, I'd recommend heading over to musictheory.net right now and working on keyboard note identification. There's 2 ways. There's the keyboard note and the keyboard reverse. And right now I have it set up to do letters. We'll see if I can, well, it also has some solfege stuff in here. And you can also add in all sharps or all flats. So right now, it's just basic notes. So right here, I start out with the D in the doghouse. So look, there's a group of 2. D is right in the middle, so that's a D. Got it. The next one is up here. I can start back at the D. So I go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so on and so forth. Let's see if I can change and add in some sharps up here. Make sure that you know that sharps are going to be higher, so you're going to be looking for the note that is slightly lower. So here we go. It's on a black note. Since I'm only working the sharps, I'm going to have to find the note that goes slightly below it so that the note goes up. So I'm looking for this note right there. Here's a D in the doghouse, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A sharp. And there it is. So that's something that you should jump in and do right now before we go on, because that is going to be pretty crucial before we go on. So go ahead and pause and get to that. So understanding how the keyboard works, we're going to jump in to intervals. And we're going to look, first of all, just add a normal music staff right here. I'm going to scroll down on my notes. I will be sure to share this document with you so you have my notes that I'm going off of as well. So, just working with some half notes, I'm going to go and work in treble clef right now. And I'm going to create an interval. So here's my first interval. I have a note on bottom and I have a note on top. That interval is required for that. Now, with the intervals, you're going to have two different things come in. You're going to have a quantity, which is a number, and a quality, which is going to be like major or minor. And the quantity is probably the easiest part because you're just going to count the distance between the two notes. Okay? So, for example, I'm going to, and you can see this down here, I'm going to count the bottom note. So I'm going to count this note, which is an F, that's 1. Okay, so I'm sitting at 1. Now I'm going to count the amount of notes between the bottom and top notes. So I'm going to go 1, there's 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to count the top note, 5. So the quantity of this interval is a fifth. Okay, if I change that interval, I'm going to go a little higher. Count the bottom note, start, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is a seventh. Same way if I come down here, this is 1, 2. This would be a second. Some fancy things, if you see both notes together like this, that's just unison. Or perhaps it'd be in another measure. These notes are in unison. They're singing the same note. All right, so that's the easy part about quantity. Again, I'd encourage you to stop and head over here to musictheory.net, and you can work with just the simple interval identification. And you'll go over here and go to the intervals, and I would encourage you just to choose these ones right here, the majors and the perfects, because that's what we're going to be mostly looking at. And so you're going to just find the number. That will make it pretty easy. And you can just ignore all the sharps and stuff for right now. So here we have a B and a C. That's 1, 2. So that's going to be a second. And here is 1, 2, 3. That's a third. So that would be the first way to jump in and practice. So you can pause and go do that right now as well. All right, quality. This is where it gets a little complicated, and I feel free to watch this as many times as you need, practice as much as you need to as well. So for the quality, we're looking for the basic level right now. We're just looking for major and minor. So let's start with this interval right here. So we know that it is a third. Okay, that's pretty basic. So first of all, we want to go over here and identify the two notes on the keyboard in question. So here, this is where your knowledge of notes on the staff is going to have to transfer to a keyboard. So this is getting pretty advanced already because there's multiple levels involved where you have to develop your speed and accuracy at it. So right here in treble clef, I have an F and an A because the spaces spell face. So if I go over to my keyboard, here's an F, and then here is an A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to count the number of half steps that are between the two notes. So you see this down here in my notes. Count the number of half steps between the notes. And it's the amount of total notes black and white. All right, so the number of half steps between there, because from this note to this note is a half step. Here's another half step and a half step. It's kind of like the Jaws theme. If you ever heard the Jaws theme. Okay, so that's the Jaws theme. Although they're just like half steps, two notes, and you have like a major villain. So from this note to this note, I'm going to have this amount of half steps. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps. Okay, if I would change the notes, I'm going to go to this note instead. This is a B, so I'm going to have, here's the F. Remember, don't count this first note on this case for the quality. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 half steps in there. If I change that again and go down to this note right here, I have from an F to a G. Here's the F, and I go 1, 2. There's 2 half steps there between the F and the G. Now I take those numbers, and I have created a handy dandy little chart here, again, that I will be sure to share with you. And you're going to use the chart below to identify the interval. You must already know the quantity. So if I go back up here and I make this a third, I know it's the number is 3. I'm going to go down here, and for the simple identification, for those of you not doing the collegiate stuff, you're just going to look in one category right here, in the simple interval. And you'll see that this has lowercase m's, uppercase m's, some p's, there's one a in there, and I'll tell you what all these are here shortly. So I'm looking for the number of half steps, which is over here, and the number. So on this note, I have an F and then an A. The number of half steps in between there is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, remember, with the quantity or the number, how I got the third, I do count the notes here up on the staff. So I count 1, 2, 3. But when I go to quality and look at my keyboard, I actually don't count that first note. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to come over here, found my number of half steps. Here's the 4, and there's my quality, that capital M. That means major. Okay, a lowercase m is going to mean minor, and a P is going to mean perfect. Okay, we'll get to those here in a moment. So the first thing that we need to be able to identify is really just the major and minor seconds and thirds. Okay, because that's the basis of our chord, is going to be a major third or minor third, and I'll throw in minor and major seconds there as well. So when you go over here musictheory.net, you're going to choose the interval identification, go to the intervals, and choose major and minor seconds and thirds. That is level 1. Over here, when I was working on musictheory.net, I had only one key signature selected, and that was the key of C. And that's what I do want you to work in, because when you start adding these others for now, it's going to make things a little complicated, especially if you're more at the basic level. Alrighty, here we go. So major seconds, minors, and thirds. So here I have a D and an E. Head over to my keyboard. Here's a D, here's an E. So the amount of half steps between there, I'm counting, I know it's a second, because those are right next to each other, but I go 0, 1, 2. So there are 2 half steps on there. My handy dandy chart tells me this is a major second. And that is true. Here I have an F sharp. This is where accidentals will come into play. So I have an E and an F sharp. The distance between here is a second. And here's an E, here's an F sharp. The distance between here is 0, 1, 2. And again, my chart tells me that is a major second. All right, this one right here, I have a G and an A flat. So I find a G and an A flat. So there is only 1 half step between those two. My handy dandy chart says that is a minor second. Got it. The next one, I have a C and a D. There is 0, 1, 2. That is a major second. Is it going to give me a third? There's a third. This is an F and an A. So here's an F, here's an A. The number of half steps, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. My handy dandy chart says that is a major third. All right, so that's how to start out. That is the most basic. And that's what we're going to stop with our first video. So go ahead and go practice that. That's the first video right here. The next video is going to be talking about fourths and fifths. There is a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth. That's kind of different from major minor. And there's also an augmented between there. So we're just going to mostly worry about the perfect fourths and fifths for the next video. So go ahead and practice that. Get familiar with those before you head on to the next video.